Hey folks, hope you guys are having a good day. Kind of starting it off with some live tunes. Just for fun. Have the music channel, youtube.com/@ZoolOnline. No talkies on that channel. It's only music. And that's pretty cool because I don't have to worry about saying anything on that channel. So, welcome to the WriteStream. We're actually not doing music today, really. Other than that, we are going to talk about writing. So, I'm going to put the guitar up here. Unless you guys want to hear something else at the end. And then we can... I don't know, do something else with that. So lots of the practice of what I've been doing here, what I just demonstrated, which was some live ambient rock. Thank you for the super chat, Zachary. I really, really do appreciate it. Thank you for appreciating what I do and what work I do. You can get more of it at patreon.com/DavidVStewart, relaunching the Patreon. What are we doing with the Patreon? Well, you'll get free books. So I'll have a different book every month. I think I have enough books to give a free book away in a 2-year cycle. So if you were a patron for 2 years at the level where you get a free book, then you get every book in the course of 2 years. And some of those will be longer. Some of those will be shorter. There's a couple tiers. One of them is just, $1 and you can read the posts, $5, and I don't have the server launched yet, but we'll have a private Patreon only server, Discord server, and some private chats, and you'll get a free copy of Keys to Prolific Creativity, which is my creativity manual that sold pretty good. So if you don't have that yet, you get a free copy of that. For $15 a month, you get a free ebook, plus you get the Keys to Prolific Creativity. I may throw in some free music or something too for everyone. So if anyone wants to stream the music, they can. I'm gonna probably make the music free on the ZoolOnline channel as well, though. So keep that in mind. And then if you are wanting to spend $35 a month, you'll get a paperback every month. I'll send you a paperback. It would require my address because I'm going to mail it to you. But anyway, that's what's going on. And we're kind of soft launching that, so we'll kind of ramp it up as we go here with all of the other stuff. Give me just a second to put this guy back on the wall and get my camera back to an angle where I'm not you're looking down. No one looks down upon Man-O-War. That was a fun story where someone went to a Man-O-War concert and the balcony's all closed off. And he's like, can I go up on the balcony and see the show? And their answer was, no one looks down upon Man-O-War. Who's calling me? My wife. Hello? Be right back. All right. A little bit more of a natural angle here, sort of, as we dive into this. Here's what I want to talk about on today's WriteStream, the stream about writing, which I did this for a long time, 2 years or something. And maybe not that long. I think I did them for a whole year and talked about this stuff. So anyway, what I want to talk today is about beginning things, like beginnings of books, because I saw that the beginning to Harry Potter was voted like the best opening to a book ever. And I have a small problem with that because I don't think the beginning of the first Harry Potter book is really a very good beginning to a book. I think it's, it's serviceable. It's okay. It's not that great. Let me grab a copy of it real quick and we'll read it. And maybe we'll compare it to like some other like famous beginnings to books and see how it stacks up. I actually think it's a better beginning to a book than most people give it credit for. However, is it the best? I don't think I could really say it's the best. I mean, I could say that it is good for what the first book is doing, and that's what I'm going to say here. I'll be right back. I'm going to go grab a copy of the book. All right, my cat is throwing a fit here too, so you have to deal with the cat making some noise. All right, so this is the American edition, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. It is a, shall we say, a slightly inauspicious beginning to the book, but somehow it was voted number one. And really, I think the reason that it's voted number one has to do with the fact that Harry Potter is an extremely popular franchise. Not because it is a very good beginning to a line. It's kind of like if you go to a battle of the bands. If you've ever been to a battle of the bands, the best band never wins. It's always like the band whose friends, the most friends showed up, right? And I've run several of these. I've been to several of them when I was younger, and it was always like, oh, yeah, they won because they brought 40 of their friends, even though they suck. That's just how Battle of the Bands stuff wins. It's all like a little publicity. I don't even know if anyone does those anymore. That may be like a really old thing. And it's in recent memory. So this was a really recent hit. Let's read it. Actually, let me get some light. Turn on the light here. Oh! Bup, bup, bup. Then I can see a little bit better what I'm doing here. Where's my reading glasses? I have my reading glasses on to operate the software, the looping software. I'll put them back on for this. Nice big glasses. I like them to fill up my whole view. Mr. and Mrs. Dursley of number 4 Privet Drive were proud to say they were perfectly normal. Thank you very much. Does that sound like a good beginning to a book? Nah, I actually think if you take it on its own, I think it's one of the worst beginnings to a popular and enduring book that I can think of. It's not anywhere close to something like The Man in Black fled across the desert and the gunslinger followed. Or it was the best of times. It was the worst of times. Or even like In a Hole There Lived a Hobbit. You hear that? It sounds really simple, but it's like, well, what the hell's a hobbit? I have to keep reading. This doesn't really make me want to read. However, I think it's actually a better opening line than it would appear based on just the awkwardness of it, right? It's a very awkward conversational beginning of a line, especially for something that's going to span 7 books. But I think it's better than it seems because of what is being set up, which is the escapism element. We are starting with the Dursleys because they're going to be the contrast to the wizarding world that Harry Potter is going to inhabit. The Dursleys are profoundly boring. They want to be boring. They basically represent all the bad things of kind of middle-class British society in the 1990s. They're overweight. They're angry. They get in other people's business. They don't want to be known as weird. They want to be in the mainstream and have nothing strange about them, to be completely normal and have no one really pay attention to them except to notice like the quality of their lawn clipping or whatever, whatever boring thing they care about presenting themselves as. So when you understand that that's what they're starting with, because what they're going to give you, or what Rawling is going to give you, is an escape from the mundane. We're presenting the mundane as the worst possible light. We're going to escape from the mundane, not just to a magical world, but a place of meaning. Notice the Dursleys' lives, as we read this, have no meaning to them. They were perfectly normal, thank you very much. They were the last people you'd expect to be involved in anything strange or mysterious, because they just didn't hold with such nonsense. Mr. Dursley was the director of a firm called Grunnings, which made drills. Now, I mean, most people are not interested in the ins and outs of drill making or drill selling, right? So she's trying to come up with a really boring job. Like, he's got an office job. He doesn't make tables or something. He's not a carpenter. He just like goes to an office and yells at people, as you sort of get this idea. So we start with the worst of middle America, and then we escape to a land of magic. The Dursleys are obsessed with things that have no meaning to them, whereas Harry Potter's life has meaning. He's the chosen one. He's the boy who lived. He's destined to kill Voldemort. He lives a life not just of mundanity, a mundane life, but a life full of abuse. So not only are these people really boring, but to the extent that they're not boring, they're abusive of Harry. And they hate Harry for not being boring. So what does the escape do? Escape from the boring, the regular, the meaningless into the exciting, the extraordinary, the meaningful. And so in that case, this opening line is actually one of the better opening lines that I can think of, because of how it's functioning in the book, rather than because we remember it on its own, or because it makes us want to read further in the book on its own. The truth is about opening lines, they are important, but they are not so critically important that you have to nail them or have them be perfect. What's much more important is that you introduce the reader to the conflict quickly and the ideas that they're going to interact with quickly and efficiently and in a way that they want to keep reading. So you may not have a book where like it lends itself to an amazing opening line. I have books that the beginning of the story where I need to start the story, it just doesn't begin with something that's going to be like, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times, or the man in black fled across the desert, whatever it's going to be. As you keep reading, it's like the Dursleys had a small son called Dudley, and in their opinion, there was no finer boy anywhere. The Dursleys had everything they wanted, but they had a secret, and their greatest fear is that somebody would discover it. They didn't think they could bear it if anyone found out about the Potters. Mrs. Potter was Mrs. Dursley's sister, but they hadn't met for several years. So it goes on like this. Like, the secret is they don't want people to think they're weird, that they have weird, magical people kind of involved in their lives. So it's a better opening line than you think, but if you listen to it on its own, it doesn't sound very good. It's par at best. And in fact, that conversational tone, I think, makes it even better, because that's how the Dursleys would talk. We are perfectly normal, thank you very much. Right? They wouldn't say things in a poetic or meaningful or memorable way. They'd say things in a boring, pedantic way. So it begins with the boring and the pedantic, because you're going to escape from that into the wizarding world. One of the things about opening lines is that the opening line, think about selling a book for you people who are maybe going to publish books. There's a really basic order to a sale. And the sale of a book is not that much different than the sale of a vacuum cleaner. What you have is you have something that gets the person's attention. In this case, it's usually going to be a book cover. Not my favorite. The American book covers are okay, but they're certainly not my favorite. I like the British ones a little bit better. And the illustrated editions have better book covers as well, but it's enough. Oh, there's like a boy on a broom, and a castle. Maybe I'll pick it up and look at it. That's the first thing, is they click on the case of Amazon, or they pick it up off a bookshelf if it's a physical book. Of course, this was released back before the days of Kindle, so like this order would happen in a physical way. So I'm going to pick it up off the shelf, turn it over, and read the back. What we call the blurb. Let's read the blurb. Harry Potter has never played a sport while flying on a broomstick. He's never worn a cloak of invisibility, befriended a giant, or helped hatch a dragon. Okay, so the back of the cover is really giving you the reveal that you get from the beginning. So you kind of know what you're in for. You know what's exciting about the story is the magic stuff. The first line doesn't really need to sell you. Rather, the first line needs to sell you on what the conflict was. So we know that there's magic from the back blurb, and we open it up in the first things about the Dursleys and how boring they are. That actually works, I think. So when you have a book, yeah, people will click on the cover. That's why you got to have a good cover design. They'll read the blurb, which is like the description. Before they open the book, the next thing that happens may be a couple of things. They'll look for reviews. The reviews are what we call social proof that other people like the product and other people are wanting to buy the product. So they'll look at the average. Oh, it has like 4 stars. They'll look at the average, maybe even as they click. Oh, it has a 5-star average. That's good. So everybody likes it. Then they might read some reviews, and someone will say like, oh, this is a great story for kids. And they're like, that's not for me. Or yes, I want a story for kids. Then they'll, read the first page of the book and see, oh, I wonder what's going on. Now, if you haven't sold them by the time that they open up that first page of the book, then yeah, that first page really matters. But most of the time you're selling the person before they really get to that first page. And that's just confirmation. They're just confirming as they go through the social proof. I know I want this. If other people want it, that means it might be good. And if it looks like I like the first page, then it's probably going to be good. They're really convincing themselves that they ought to buy it at that point. And that's how that order of things will work. So the opening line to a book, it really matters. And the name of this stream is Resumption, or, beginnings. Resumption is the word that occurs right before the beginning of the first Dark Tower book, The Gunslinger by Stephen King, with one of the best opening lines in fantasy. The man in black fled across the desert and the gunslinger followed. It opens with the conflict. It doesn't tell you who the people are. You want to know that, but you know right away that the man in black is bad and the gunslinger is probably good, and there's a desert. You have setting, characters, and plot in one very short sentence. It makes you really want to read on. That is a great opening line. Let's check out the chat. Nice new setup. Thank you. It's not really new. I'm borrowing my wife's camera because I've been using a Logitech C920 for years now at this point. And something is wrong with the camera to where it wants to crash my video card driver. It doesn't play nice with my video card driver. I don't know why. There's something about it. This is a Razer Kiyo Pro, which I got for my wife for her business because she does a lot of remote work now for her business. I'm like, you got to have a good camera where you look good. Matters how you look. And so this one, it's a good camera. It's an HD camera. It's not a 4K camera, but it has really good color. You notice like how many colors are going on in this frame. I'm in a fairly low light environment. There's like the purple lights behind me, which are like my Halloween decoration. They're like lighting up the front of my house and stuff. And then there's, white walls behind me, like a red guitar. That guitar in the back is actually green, but it's too dark really to tell the color of it from here. So anyway, it's a good one. You can see the dog. There's hi dog. Hi doggy. So anyway, yeah, that's it. Onslow and his wife from Keep Up with Appearances. Yeah. Lighting looks great. Loved your Return of the Jedi video. Thank you. So that's just my reflection video. I'll do like a more full analysis video on Return of the Jedi. Growing up, Return of the Jedi was one of my favorite. It was my favorite Star Wars movie because of all the things that I said in that video and all the things that went with it. Star Wars is another example of something that begins really well. Not just the movie, the first movie, Star Wars, but that opening crawl. You have to think that nobody's walking out of the movie in the first few minutes. That's not going to happen. So you have their attention. You want to really grab them while you have their maximum attention at the beginning of the movie. So you have a great big orchestra hit. It says it's time to watch the movie. It's really loud. Bah, da, 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 you know. Up comes the crawl, and it gives you a summary of everything thus far. Like the masters of old, it begins in media res, in the middle of things. It tells you the conflict right out of hand. So before you even have the first scene, you have exposition, direct exposition, telling you what you need to know to interpret the next scene and what's going on. This is really good, and even I feel like George Lucas has even missed some opportunities with the crawl, where he's needed to explain things maybe a little too much. And the example that I usually go with is episode 1, The Phantom Menace. And in that, you have this long crawl about like tariffs and stuff. And then you have to have a scene where the queen is talking to her counselors or whatever about the Trade Federation. And they're basically saying things to each other that they already know. And I call that expositional dialogue, right? We're exposing other parts of the story through dialogue. We're not just talking about character. We're like, have you met Jane? She's rather full of herself. Yes, she's very arrogant, right? So we're talking about characters. Yes, let's go down to the burger joint, which we love the best, right? You know, people don't really talk that way, but sometimes you have to put it in there because it's the most efficient way to tell the audience the information that they need to know in order to understand the conflict, understand the characters, understand the stakes of the story, that kind of stuff. Those opening crawls are just a really great storytelling device. Another way you could do that in a movie or let's say a comic book is to use a narration. So in a comic book, it'd be a narrator box. So you have a narration over a visual scene. So the visual scene gives you some information, but the narration is just sort of directly telling you what you need to know about the scene to proceed. So that's another way that you can, it's basically a Star Wars crawl, but you just do it with audio instead of making people read. So yes, it works really, really well. If you need to pack a lot of information in and you just want it to be really clear right from the get-go what's going on with the characters and the conflict, then having a narration or having a crawl, an opening title crawl like what you have with Star Wars is a really good idea. It's a really cool idea. So that's a great way to open a movie. Hey, what's up, Adrian? Hope you're having a good day. Do you have a best book opening openings? Opening or openings? As far as the ones I've read, I'd probably say the best one I can think of is probably Dark Tower by Stephen King, because it just nails every aspect of story writing, and it has a flow to it that just sounds great as well. As far as what I've written, I like the beginning of Eyes in the Walls. Eyes in the Walls, I don't know if I have it here. Let's see what I have. I have Matt Krotz's book. You guys should check this out. Kyrie. Really cool comic, graphic novel by Matt Krotz. Talented artist. Keys to Prolific Creativity. You get that for joining my Patreon. You'll get it for free. Crown of Sight has a good opening. I love the opening to Elric of Melniboné by Michael Moorcock. White was his hair and white was his skin on the ruby. You know, it's good. Here's this opening line. I'm old. Kadak sat brooding upon his throne, its carved surfaces gilded with the treasure of his many conquests. Its bulk was held aloft on a wooden stand by 2 ranks of slaves who bore it upon 2 great logs that sat upon their shoulders. Images of demons and human suffering ran up and down the back and the sides of the great chair, a baroque cacophony of wicked iconography, dedicated wholly to the Lord that sat upon it. I'm describing a chair, right? Boring! But it's really about like how that relates to the name that begins Kadak, the first guy there. Despite the jagged textures, it was comfortable, for the seat and back were made of a supple leather, tanned by the finest craftsmen in the Drycenith Empire, giving you a little bit of setting there. When Kadak entertained visitors, usually heads of state he intended to bring into his power and will, he was sure to describe the secret of this leather, that it was made from the skins of kings who had betrayed or defied him, And an ottoman, no less grotesque, was being made, he was sure to remind the wavering prince. The roof above the throne, of the same sort of material, he only described to his subordinates, for it was made of the skins of those who failed him, due to the unforgivable sin of cowardice. So we start with a character and setting. Then we do the conflict in the next paragraph. You generally want to introduce as much of the conflict as you can on the first page. You want readers to really have an idea like what's at stake or what's the danger. The king of the gray-skinned giants gazed across the barren field at the gates of Pelinalda, the impenetrable domain of Pelinel the Great, the lord of the Bastion elves, keepers of the secrets of the Prim in the hazy chaos that marched to the city's back. They were guardians as well of an ancient relic that concerned Cadoc's god. The slaves that held aloft Cadoc's throne, hale, sun-darkened men of the southern territories, did not fidget despite the wind that blew across the battle plain, which brought stinging dust to cling to their sweaty bodies. Cadoc could sit as if he were upon stone, time being his own. So we would kind of return to the throne, and then we interrupt that with some conversation. So we have an idea. He wants this city, right? The big idea behind this book, by the way, was like, I'm going to cut out the entirety of the fantasy book except for the last act. So it's just the last act. That's what this book is. And that was the idea behind it. And I really enjoyed writing it. And I think it came out pretty well for what it was. Zimamaru, people actually do talk like that. My mom just loves recanting things that I obviously already know. It wasn't until I started writing that I noticed she's a real-life exposition dump. I don't know real people that actually talk like that. My mom sometimes will tell me things that I already know because she has forgotten that I know them. You know, it's like, did you know this? I'd be like, yes, I knew that. And then she keeps talking. That's what's funny. I love my mom, but sometimes people are like that. They're like, hey, did you know this? And then you're like, yeah, I knew that. And then they're like, well, my whole conversation was built. I planned this conversation around me telling you I was going to tell you about this. So here I go. I'm going to continue. Here we go. Best book opening is Voyage of the Dawn Treader. I don't remember it. Let's look it up. Voyage of the Dawn Treader. There was a boy called Eustace Clarence Scrubb, and he almost deserved it. Actually, that's a great one. That's like In a Hole There Lived a Hobbit. I got to know about this kid and why he's so bad. There was a boy named Eustace Clarence Scrubb, and he almost deserved it. Great opening lines to hook young readers on NPR. Let's take a look at a couple of these. They're not showing them to me. Okay. Let's go up to the beginning. Boom. Tangle Wreck. At 6:45 one summer morning, a red London bus was crossing Waterloo Bridge. That's not very good. It isn't until you read a little more that you get these lines. The bus and its passengers were never found. It was the first of the time tornadoes. Or, there was one that was, I think it was one of the Earthsea books. The day was long and full of dragons. That's a good one. The day was long and full of dragons. I come from a family with a lot of dead people. That's Each Little Bird That Sings by Deborah Wiles. Wimberley Worried by Kevin Hanks. Wimberley worried about everything. It's okay. Ragweed by Avi. Ma, a mouse has to do what a mouse has to do. It's okay. Stormbreaker by Anthony Horowitz. Where's the line? When the doorbell rings at 3 a.m, it's never good news. That's all right. It was a dark and stormy night. It's about on par with that one to me. We went to the moon to have fun, but the moon turned out to completely suck. That's Feed by M.T. Anderson. Millicent Min, Girl Genius by Lisa Yee. I have been accused of being anal retentive, an overachiever, and a compulsive perfectionist. Like those are bad things. Richard Peck, the teacher's funeral. If your teacher has to die, August isn't a bad time of year for it. That's a good one. That's actually a really good one. Voyage of the Dawn Treader. There was once a boy called Eustace Clarence Scrubb, and he almost deserved it. Adrian says he's doing great. Currently on vacation in Texas, visiting my sister. Awesome. Well, if you're in the Houston area, give me a ring, and we can grab lunch or something. I'm in just north of Houston. But Texas is a big state. It's like, I have friends that come into California. Man, I'm in California. We should hang out. I'm like, where are you at? They're like, oh, I'm in San Diego. I'm like, well, that's too bad. I'm in Fresno. Well, how far away is that? 8 hours. Oh. Wow. It takes 8 hours to drive across California? No, that's just halfway from the bottom to the top. That's halfway there. It takes a long time to drive from San Diego up to the border with Oregon, whatever town's up there. So anyway, those are some good opening lines, but like I said, they don't need to be that great. They need to be good enough to keep somebody reading the rest of the paragraph, I think. You don't want to turn people off to where they're not going to read it. You don't want your opening line to be like truly, truly bad. I'm trying to remember the opening line of Chronicles of Lord Fowl's Bane. Yeah, it just says she came out of the store just in time to see her young son playing on the sidewalk, directly in the path of the gray, gaunt man who strode down the center of the walk like a mechanical derelict. For an instant, her heart quailed. Then she jumped forward, gripped her son by the arm, snatched him out of harm's way. You know, it starts with action. The man went by without turning his head. As his back moved away from her, she hissed at it. Go away, get out of here, you ought to be ashamed. So we really want to investigate further. So it's good enough to draw us in. It doesn't need to be like a slam dunk. It doesn't need to be a grand slam to keep people reading. It just has to be good enough to keep us invested enough to figure out what's going on past that. But I do remember that had a good one where he's like kind of, he's just seething as he goes through the street to the post office to pick up something. Everybody hates him because he has leprosy. Yeah, a lot of our states are bigger than countries. People in Europe don't get it. I'm like, I moved across the country. They're like, oh, you just moved. I'm like, I moved. To put it in perspective, it'd be the equivalent if I moved from like Barcelona to Moscow. It's like, what? Yeah, or like I think I figured out. It was like moving from Barcelona to Constantinople. That's how far I moved, you know, because that's not even all the way across the U.S. If you were to go from like San Diego to New York, it's like going from Portugal to Moscow, you know. And then Russia is so big, you could go from like going from Moscow to like the others to like Siberia or something is the equivalent of going. I can't even think of an equivalent. It'd be like the equivalent of if you're to turn it on its side, going from like Calgary to Panama. You know, it's so far. My favorite's one from the Dresden Files. The building was on fire, and it wasn't my fault. I don't remember which one that one was. I'm not a huge fan of the Dresden Files, but he does tell a good story. He does know how to start a book and really hook you with a good conflict and keep you going. I like the Golden Compass's opening page. It does a nice job drawing the reader in. Let's look that one up. The Golden Compass. That's, opening line. No. Lyra and her demon moved through the darkening hall, taking care to keep to one side, out of sight of the kitchen. Yeah, we got a demon. So we're mentioning something cool in there. You know, we got a demon. The demon is there. Let me look up the opening line to Elric, because it's pretty good. And now opens the tragedy which will close many years from now and precipitate the destruction of the world. It is the color of a bleached skull, his flesh, and the long hair which flows below his shoulders is milk white. So we start with a conflict, then we get a character. Setting characters and plot. Right there. Yeah, I don't remember which Dresden Files that is. I love, there's an opening line from, it's not from a Conan book, but it's a Conan story. Robert E. Howard was really good at opening stories, so let's take a look at a couple of his opening lines. If I have them here. Got to get it, kind of shuffle past my pedal board. Yeah, here we go. Got Cole. That's a good one. I don't know where I put other stuff. Oh, here's Eyes in the Walls. Okay, so here's one of my opening lines. My mom used to joke that being a mortician was the best job in the world because all your customers walk away satisfied. At least they never complain. Of course they never walk away, except maybe I saw one of them walk away. Should I tell you the story? That's the opening from this one. Great read for October. This might be the free book. Let me see what's the free book on Patreon. I don't remember which one I set up because it was like the middle of the night. Let's look at, where's the shop? It's actually in the shop. No, it's Water of Awakening. I should make Eyes in the Walls like the free one because it's October. Maybe I'll switch it around. We'll do Water of Awakening next month. Best opening in Elric series is that of Fortress of the Pearl. I don't remember it offhand, but I have Fortress of the Pearl somewhere. Yes. This is the one they used in the Conan movie. This one is from Phoenix on the Sword. Which, actually, the Phoenix on the Sword, the first Conan story, is a rewrite of the last Cole story called By This Axe I Rule. And they actually made By This Axe I Rule into a movie starring Kevin Sorbo as Cole the Conqueror back in the 1990s, I think. Yeah, it's this great... they adapted this for the movie. Know, O Prince, that between the years when the oceans drank Atlantis, and the gleaming cities, and the years of the rise of the sons of Ares, there was an age undreamed of, when shining kingdoms lay spread across the world like blue mantles beneath the stars. Nemedia, Ophir, Brithunia, Hyperborea, Zamora with its dark-haired women and towers of spider-haunted mystery, Zingara with its chivalry, Koth that bordered on the pastoral lands of Shem, Stygia with its shadow-guarded tombs, Hyrcania, whose riders wore steel and silk and gold. But the proudest kingdom of the world was Aquilonia, reigning supreme in the dreaming west. Hither came Conan, the Cimmerian, black-haired, sullen-eyed, sword in hand, a thief, a reaver, a slayer with gigantic melancholies and gigantic mirth, to tread the jeweled thrones of the earth under his sandaled feet. Man, if that doesn't make you want to read the next story, I don't know what is. It's got a huge exposition of setting. It's just throwing out a bunch of names to make you think that the world is big, and then it introduces you to the character of Conan. It doesn't give you the conflict for this story. Rather, it leans on this character Conan, like, this guy's a great guy. You're going to want to know a lot about him. You know, destined to tread the jeweled thrones of the earth under his sandaled feet. So in the movie, it became really condensed into a great opening line. You know, from the time when the oceans drank Atlantis to the coming of the sons of Ares was a time undreamed of. Unto this came Conan, destined to wear the jeweled crown of Aquilonia upon a troubled brow. But yeah, I like that one a lot too. Kevin Sorbo cool was Kaino. Yeah, it was a cool movie. I haven't seen it in forever though. Another two good openers from Call of Cthulhu and At the Mountains of Madness. I am forced into speech because men of science have refused to follow my advice without knowing why. We're not going to look at the first Cole story, but the Shadow Kingdom. The blare of the trumpets grew louder, like a deep golden tide surge, like the soft booming of the evening tides against the silver beaches of Elusia. The throng shouted, women flung roses from the roofs as the rhythmic chiming of silver hoofs came clearer, and the first sign of the mighty array swung into the view of the broad white street that curved round the golden spire tower of splendor. Right, so we're describing a like a parade, but it does make you want to read more. It's not as good as like the Conan opening line. Let me give you the opening line from this book, which I wrote, called Muramasa Blood Drinker. It is said that it is the destiny of good men to die young, to fall to the sword, and it is the destiny of wicked men to go on living. It is a cynical view, a false view, but not for the reason you think. The truth is, there are no good men. When you peer into the hearts of men, you will understand that they are all wicked, and they all fall to the sword. My sword. The bandit known as Ryunosuke. The statement was believed to be taken down by a scribe in a small village north of Osaka, shortly before his death. The scribe, who was a visitor to the area, was known only as Takumi. His head was found neatly arranged on a bed of fresh white rice, as if it were a delicate sashimi. And then Act 1. You know, so that's what I start with, is like the severed head on a plate of rice. I just thought that would be a cool beginning to a book. And I started, I've started several books with poems because I think that's a great way to get people's attention. So I did that for, let me think what I did it for. Shadow and Smoke. I did it for Needle Ash. Did I do it for any others? The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents. Both inspire such dread, yeah. An inferior writer could ruin himself trying to open a novel that way, but that was quite lovely. The day was long and full of dragons. I'm wondering which Earthsea book that was. He was very weary. The day had been long and full of dragons. It's from The Farthest Shore. The Farthest Shore, if you ever read the Earthsea series, I'll just give you some advice. Probably stop after the third book. I think the third book wraps things up well, and then it just really kind of spirals into boring self-indulgence after that one. But the first three books of Earthsea are very good. Let me see how else I've opened some things. We'll look at some of my opening lines. We'll see if they're any good. We'll see if they're any good. Yeah, I think Needle Ash. I began with a pre-story thing. From a make-believe book that you only get in snippets throughout the series called The Apocrypha of Verbus. The sweets of life are enjoyed seldom and by few, but the bitterness of death is tasted by all. And there you find bitterness is another relative thing, among many other relative mutable things that make a mundane world you call immutable. But for the honorable there is no death, only a return to the dream. Dreams to a living man are like gazing through a clouded mirror, whereas the dreams of death are like crystal water. Only beyond the hazy veil of the mundane, the old dreams, shall we meet face to face and see each other as we truly are. So it's actually kind of a reference to St. Paul. Most people picked up on that, I think. But that's how I begin it, because I really need to begin the next scene with the characters and the conflict, which are, not quite as. There we go. That works. I think my kids and stuff came home, so let's get them out of the frame in case they're playing back there. All right. Okay. Because the next scene it's basically weather. You're never supposed to open a book with weather, but I did that, so I guess you can do it too. This is a bad day to give battle, Michael thought. He walked through the muddy tracks of the forward camp, grumbling as he felt mud slip between his sabatons and his boots. It's a bad day to give battle, Michael thought. Water of Awakening, people criticize this beginning because they think it lacks zing or something. Helga was a young woman grown from an impetuous and difficult to satisfy girl. That's not the best, but gives you a character. Right? Gives you a character. City of Silver. How do I begin this one? Tell me, Vindrel, what is power? What did I do for Tyrant's Gallow? Probably it's number 2, so it probably does not good. Claire stood at the edge of the castle chapel, staring through a clear space in one of the windows. The image of the shore beyond was blurry through the ancient glass. Yeah, it's just begins at the next part. Not really a great opening line, but it's like book 2, so you don't really need a great opening line for like a book 2. It's probably what I was thinking of. This one was, the throne was white and impressively tall, supposedly proportioned for the god Verbus himself, a giant when he was in physical form who had placed the seat in the precise center of the dome dedicated to him in lieu of an altar. And then I have some poetry in the first actual chapter, but, Anyway. Yeah, there's poetry. I think I have poetry on every chapter. Yeah. I begin every chapter with a little alliterative poem, which is fun. How does Al-Shafalda begin? This is a good one. Let's check it out. Act 1, The Last Kingdom. What shall I say of Derusuo, king of Al-Shafalda? Warrior, hero, poet, savior, sinner, betrayer, wretch, madman? None of these small words can describe what he truly was. He was beyond words, and yet in the end, he was bound by them. So again, I like the Conan opening, so this is sort of like the Conan opening, but exposing a much different character with a different conflict. Words can't describe him, but in the end, words bound him. The importance of words is actually a really central theme to my entire fantasy world. Which you'll find out if you ever read any of the books. What time is it? I might need to go and check in on my mom because she's not feeling well. So I think that's it for like my books openings, which I guess are kind of boring. I don't know. I didn't even get to all the books. I didn't even get to all my books. But yeah, they all have, man, here's a bunch of books I wrote. You'll get these for free on Patreon eventually if you're on the Patreon. So I'll give away the ebook ones. And if you're on one of the higher tiers, I think the $35 tier, you get a paperback. Or I think I'll probably won't do hardbacks because they're really expensive. But like, I don't know. If you're on a really hard, I only have 2 books in hardback. I need to put Muramasa in hardback. That's a good book to have in hardback. So I'll probably do that one in hardback next. I was thinking about having a new cover done by it. I think maybe trying to persuade Jesse White to do a cover for me. I could say as far as a business decision, it's not the best business decision because it costs money. But it would be cool to just have a better cover, Anyway. Thank you. Nice opening for your tragic fantasy. It is. I'm trying to think what it starts. Jerusalem walked past the immaculate marble gallery where sat his alabaster throne, cushioned in rich purple, flanked by the banners of war that had been forgotten for centuries by his people and never known by the human servants who swept the empty room each day. It's the first paragraph of like the actual narrative. It gives you a little bit. You want to give the reader as much reason to read your book as possible, and so that's really the point of all that. Anyway, I'm starting to run out of time, and I'm gonna guess that I'm gonna need to go check on my mom because she was not feeling very good. So I'm going to start to close it up here. The big takeaway I want to give for this stream is that beginning a book is very important. The opening line is less important than basically giving enough information to the reader for them to make a decision about what they want to do with whatever you did, what they want to read, right? So if you can do it in a page, great. If you can do it in a paragraph, even better. Sometimes to have the writing be good, you have to use a little more space to expose all of the conflict. Setting, characters, and plot. So ideally, I'm going to use the word ideally, but remember, you can do whatever you want. It's always your work. So you can do variations. You can do different things. You can do like the Conan story where it's about the character, but it has nothing to do with the conflict of the story. There's many different ways that you can start with that opening line, and you can indeed start with the opening of a book. So don't take this as an iron law, but if you want to hook the reader, if you want the reader when you're selling the book to open it up and see what you wrote and say, I definitely want to read this story now. You want to have the setting, characters, and plot, the critical pieces of information for that on the first page, ideally the first paragraph. And if you're really good, the first line, the man in black fled across the desert and the gunslinger followed. 2 characters, a conflict, and a setting, all in one sentence. But we have some great color words like gunslinger. If you can have something like that, then it's really useful. You want to draw the reader. Like the best opening line will draw the reader to read the first paragraph, which will draw the reader to read the first page, which will set them up to read the rest of the book. And if you have a really great beginning to your book, you can mess up many times. And if you have a good ending, you can have a lot of mistakes along the way, and the readers will forgive you. Because if you gave them the conclusion that they wanted or that excited them, if maybe you had like a little bit of a lull in the third act when you wrote it, they tend to forgive that. So the openings and closings of stories are really, really, really important. The main thing is it's about exposition. It's about telling the reader what they need to know to enjoy the story. And it's better to do it efficiently and maybe not as cleverly than it is to be really, really clever and lose the reader because you don't tell them what's at stake or who's doing it or why they should keep reading. So you can imagine if you open a book, and I've given this feedback to lots of writers over the years, especially fantasy writers, is that they have a story and the story takes place in a fantasy universe that they've spent a lot of time creating and thinking about. Something that's really involved, like a Tolkien-like universe. And so the opening lines are just descriptions of this amazing place. Maybe it's really well written descriptions, but I have to say, okay, you're telling me about places, you're telling me about cities, you're telling me about things, and you're telling me about the history of things. But I don't know what this story is about. I need to know who is in the story and what they are doing. That's what I really need to know. And I remember giving some feedback to a graphic artist, really talented comic artist. And it's like, I feel like I've redrawn this a bunch of times. I'm like, the problem here is really that you aren't telling the reader enough about what they need to know. I don't know who these characters are. I don't know why they're fighting, and I don't know what's at stake with the fighting. It's like you could fix this with just some dialogue bubbles and some narration boxes that tell the reader enough about the conflict while you're showing them action panels that they care about who lives and who dies in whatever action is happening there. So it's a really easy mistake to make, is to start with action instead of why the action's happening. Starting with setting instead of who is in the setting and what they're doing. To start with a character instead of what the character is doing and why. It's great to start with a character. We have to think about what the character is doing. Even that description of Conan, it tells you what he's doing. He's like conquering the world. So it makes it for a very interesting read. The description of Elric, it's telling you what he's doing. That like the fate of the world depends upon what he's doing. It's telling you the stakes, which are like creation itself. So anyway, that's what you want to really consider when you're opening a book, is setting characters and plot. If you can do all those, then all of those questions will be answered, and you won't make the mistake of emphasizing one over the other. So yeah, not just setting, but who's in it and what they're doing. Not just the conflict, but who's in the conflict and why. Not just a character, but what the character is doing. Not just a place, but who's in the place. Not just fancy words, but fancy words describing something that matters. And all of those, you're going to have a great opening to your book or to your story or your movie or whatever it happens to be, or your game. Okay. It's really easy to err on the side of being afraid that you're going to bore the reader by giving them too much action at the beginning of a book. What really matters is you set up the reason for why the action is taking place, and then give them something that matters. So the beginning of Needle Ash, I set up why, what's going on, why they're fighting the war, how the battle's going to take place. And then we have the battle, and there's stakes in the battle. People are at risk of dying. Characters do things in order to accomplish goals in the battle. So we don't just start in the middle of the battle not knowing who's there or why. I could have done that. And in fact, some people suggest that I do that, but it's like, no, you really need to know who's doing it and why. Otherwise, it's like, is this a bad guy or a good guy? Should I care about what he's doing or not? Whereas having the opening scene where they have a battle meeting introduces all the characters and the conflict. Then you have some high stakes action happen. And then you have fallout from that action that really impacts the rest of the story as well. So that's how I set up Needle Ash. And if you haven't read that book, you should read it, because it's got a lot of plot. It's got a great plot. So anyway, guys, thanks so much. I will see you all next time. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. You can head over to my Patreon. I will link all of that again real quick. So the Patreon is patreon.com/DavidVStewart. You can actually buy things there. I'll have a whole shop set up there so people could buy things there without having to go through Amazon. That's not set up yet because I'd have to get all of my books set up on it. You can check out the new music only channel at Zool Online, and no talkie, just music. In fact, I will open that up and we will play a little music, I guess, on the way out for you guys. I don't think if there's anything else. Make sure you get on my mailing list, dvspress.com/free-book. You'll get a free copy of Demon Ex Machina just for being on the mailing list. And anyway, guys, I will see you all next time. Don't forget to have a good day. We'll turn on some music here. Yeah. Hopefully you guys can hear that. No? Oh, I don't have it on. There we go. All right. Okay, have a great one, and I'll see you all next time.